What is the Matrix?
Your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, welcome. Welcome to a brand new video of the Target Individual Program, Target Individual Experience. I am your host, a targeted individual. My name is Nigel Nicholson, and I welcome all who have been paying attention to what is going on in the world, to those who, like myself, are on a purpose of exposing the lies and revealing the truth. And specifically, when it comes to us as being targeted individuals, that those lies are the fact that the U.S. No longer engage in non-consensual human experimentation, that the U.S. government is not engaging in psychological programs against those that live within its borders, its citizens, those that live here, and the U.S. laws in terms of privacy are being upheld by its national security agencies, its law enforcement agencies, its security agencies, and its military agencies. Okay. Yet, those things are not true. You see, when the U.S. engage with other countries, particularly countries that it claims violate the rights of their citizens, that use the psychiatric industry of facilities to silence dissidents, to punish the use of psychological threat against dissidents or those who are exposing the corruptions, the lies, the U.S. will ostracize those countries like North Korea, countries like Russia, countries like Cuba, countries like who else? Certain countries in Africa, certain countries in Asia. Okay, but the U.S. itself engage in those same activities. When the U.S. confront other countries of violating the civil rights of their people, violating the human rights of their people, while the U.S. is doing the exact same thing within its own borders, and also are engaging in silencing dissidents in other countries as well. Now, you guys know I've been a TI for well over probably 2 decades. All right, 2 decades in which I am consciously aware of. Okay, but I know from studying this program that we're targeted. Just think of the number of years you've been targeted in which and I would say go back another 2, 3, 4, even 5 years before you become consciously aware of what's happening, right? Or at least, some sort of awakening happen where you say something is not right here, something is going on. Okay, now whether it's that being done purposely or whether you have become self-aware, right, because you were going through an awakening, And I think that when, as human beings, when we get to a certain age, okay, um, depending on the society that you live in, the type of programming that's you're given, and not just within the educational system, but within society in general, amongst your peers, amongst educators, amongst people you may work with, um, they all have an influence over you, whether you want to believe it or not. It may not be a direct influence, but it can be indirect influence. And sometimes indirect influence is more potent or more powerful than direct influence. Okay? Because indirect influence, it embeds the programming within your subconscious without your conscious mind ever realizing what is taking place. Okay, so you have no defense mechanism against it. Now, what we know, and I say we know, not what we believe, right, but what we know is that the U.S. government, its security agencies, even its law enforcement agencies and military agencies have engaged in non-consensual human experimentation, not just physically, biologically, chemically, but also neurologically, and also through the use of energy frequencies, whether it be sound frequencies, right, which we'll call, for the most part, vibrational acoustic energy, and as well as other frequencies. For example, auditory hearing. Okay, and I think that I was going to say believe, right? I think it was during the 1930s when they were developing the submarines and the use of radar to communicate with submarines underwater. And what they found was that within some human beings, they were able to hear an audible click. Okay, so certain people have a higher frequency of hearing. Okay, certain people also have extra perceptual abilities. Okay, meaning that they are more in tune with the Earth electromagnetic field. You would call this the people who you would say they have psychic abilities. Okay, and so particularly within the African culture, okay, which a lot of us know nothing about because white people and Arab people have co-opted African spiritual practices and co-opt it and also flip it on its head, created something that is backwards to what the Africans were practicing, right? In terms of spirituality, not religion. They've turned African spirituality into religion, okay, which is two different things. In African spirituality, Africans African started to think on a much higher level than we think today. See, today our minds have been dumbed down, okay? But yet you will find amongst black people, okay, the return of certain ancestors, right, who are brilliant. So you have a lot of black children who are born today that are what you call multi-geniuses. So just as the world first multi-genius in Hotep, who was a black African. Okay, so if you know anything about Egypt, but before it was called Egypt, it was called Kemet. Okay, it wasn't until when Alexander the Greek conquered Kemet and renamed it Egypt. Okay? But before that, okay, Greeks would travel to Kemet to learn the mystery system. And what was the mystery system? The mystery system was science, philosophy, math, agricultural, architecture, as well as others, chemistry, all created and developed in Africa. And we can go back before Kemet to Kush, which they call Nubia today, to Ethiopia, to the cradle of human development, right? In which they call in the Bible the Garden of Eden. So when I used to believe in religion, Christianity, reading the Bible, and the Bible mentioned the Garden of Eden, but I could never form a picture in my mind of where the Garden of Eden was. Okay? But it is in Africa, in where human species develop. All 6 versions were developed in Africa. Okay? The Congo region is where you will find all 6 versions in terms of fossil records of all 6 developmental stage of the human species. Okay? So, why am I saying all of this? Okay? Because I want people to understand, all right, that there are and had been people who know this, people who understood this. You see, when black people migrated and settled in Kemet, even Greek historians or Greek those who study on the Egyptian mystery system, those who were Greek, right, would say, including Herodotus, okay, and he said that the people of Kemet are a colony of the Ethiopians, okay, but Kemet was the high civilization of black achievement, African achievement, just as how Europeans will credit Greece and Rome. Well, as a black African, we credit Kemet and Kush, which today modern day Sudan, where you'll find more pyramids, though they may not be as big as the ones in Egypt today, but you will have more pyramids, and we see the progression as we go from Kush or Sudan to Egypt today. We start to see where you see these were the earlier creation of those pyramids, started with the step pyramid, then advance on to what we have in Egypt today, the 3 biggest, largest pyramids. Okay, all built, designed, built, created by black Africans. Okay, but also, right, also, when scientists today try to figure out how the pyramids were built, I'm giving you guys a little history lesson here. In Japan, they attempted to build a pyramid, and they couldn't do it. Okay, because where these huge blocks of stone were cut with precision, right? With precision. Okay, then had to be dragged across certain distance, or brought across certain distance, and then had to be stacked up on each other. What kind of tools did the ancient Kemetans use to do that? Well, even today, scientists today cannot figure that out. So what does that tell you about ancient black Africans? It tells you that they had the mathematical knowledge, the technological knowledge, in order to create that of which they've created and built. Okay, the three pyramids, the three largest pyramids. Okay, so there are a lot of hidden mysteries that even today they still haven't figured out, though they have figured out a lot. When you look at computer systems, particularly motherboards, okay, and you look at that, and you look at a picture of over an aerial picture of how the temples in Egypt, how they're lined up, motherboards look exactly like those temples, right? So technology developed is not technology that's new. Okay, we're just living in modern times. We may have more advanced production lines, production services. We may design things that are more efficient, smaller, but these things are nothing new. Okay, our African ancestors, and I say our because we all as human beings have common ancestry. Though, you know, we are all scattered across this planet, right? There is no debate about where human development began, which continent human beings migrated out of, and who those people who migrated out of Africa were. Okay? And we also know that through environmental adaptation, through thousands of years, those individuals, through their offspring, begin to physically adapt to the environment in order to survive. Right? So there's only one race, which is the human race. Black race, white race, Asian race, that's all a human construct created by white supremacists in order to create division and conflict to the for the non-white European people. Okay? But understand this, that there was a certain time, I would say probably within the 14th to the 17th century, where you had a whitewashing of Europe, Asia. Because when you go back and look at pictures from the 1800s, particularly in Asia, the vast majority of people there were black. They had slanted eyes, had straight hair, thin nose, thin lips. Again, all these characteristics you can find within some population in Africa today. Blue eyes, green eyes. Go look at the Sand people. They don't live in Asia, but the Asians look like them. Slanted eyes. They have a lighter complexion. Okay? So understand how we are continue to be lied to and deceived. And which bring me to the topic, which we as targeted individual know too well. Okay, the use of microwave and radio wave frequency to manipulate our mind, to physically harm us, to biologically harm us, to cause negative chemical reaction within our bodies, within our minds, to harm us, and how the US government have been lying for decades about these weapons and the development of these weapons. Okay? Now, I wasn't expected to do a video like this today, but like I said, usually sometimes I just follow, the guidance of the ancestors within me. And when I say that, and I do mean that, each of us carry our ancestors within us. Okay? This, again, was one of the core foundation of the Egyptian mystery system that dealt in the sciences, as well as the psychological and the, I don't want to say the word, let me put it like this, the spiritual, right, which is the unseen science. And science is the seen spiritual. Okay? So, when I say that, the ancestors within me, meaning that I am my mother, I am my father, I am my grandmother, I am my grandfather, I am my great great grandmother, I am my great great grandfather. We who are alive today carry within us the genealogical information through our DNA of all who came before us. Okay? And so that there's no question and no doubt that there are those who have sought to find, okay, ancestors who were fierce warriors, who were multi-geniuses, from ever returning. Because one thing we know about white racism and those who believe in it and practice it is that they do not want any particularly black African person or people to wake up and understand the reality in which we as black people throughout the diaspora are oppressed, abused, murdered, raped, assaulted, extorted. They are afraid of the warrior and the genius ancestor from returning. Okay, so they will do anything to stop that from happening. Just as how they assassinated our past leaders, or I would say our past messiahs, in which that's the word that they use, black messiahs. And it isn't just a black messiah, but black messiahs. And it's not just black male messiahs, but black women messiahs. Okay? So hence they sought to divide, manipulate, turn us against each other. Okay? Now as TIs, okay, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're a TI, it means that they see something within you that they are afraid of, that they find a threat. And it's usually because of your humanity, your ability to recognize when somebody's treated wrongly and to stand up for that person, no matter what ethnicity, what color that person may be. And the one thing that they will do is to try to manipulate you into hatred or hating a particular person, group of people, okay, by using what I call specific ethnic targeting, right? So this past week, they've been using a lot of lighter skinned female Hispanic women or Latinx women with children. At times, they will use Hasidic Jewish women and their children. And at times, they will use black women with their children. At times, they will use Asian women with their children. And the reason why I call that a specific targeting of an Asian group, or no, sorry, not an Asian group, but a ethnic group, is because to try to get you to hate those particular groups. Now, I can see this. Okay, I can, and they know that I can see their programming. Okay, and like I said, it is my purpose, one of my purpose, to uncover or make what is unseen seen, just as our ancestors did. Okay, is to make the unseen seen. Okay, remember, spirituality in its original definition and meaning is unseen science, and science in its original meaning and definition is seen spirituality. Okay, now if you want to know more in detail about this, I would suggest you get this book. Just give me a second here. I should have brought it up. Okay. Where are we at here? Okay. I would recommend that you guys get this book. Okay. Let me show you guys here. All right. Where am I? Okay. Get this book. It's called Spirituality Before Religion. Spirituality is Unseen Science. Science is Seen Spirituality by Professor Kaba Hayawata Kamini. Okay? And also, I would also say get this book. Okay, let me let's go back to the beginning here. Here we go. Okay, so this book is called Controlling the Human Mind, the Technologies of Political Control, and Tools for Peak Performance by Dr. Nick Begich. Okay, so I would suggest you guys get these two books because it's going to put things in a perspective in which you will better understand, okay, what's going on, what is being used to manipulate you, and understanding that these technologies or these things are not new. They are those that are controlling how information are being brought to the mass public. Okay? And if you think that they are going to give you all the information you need to break free of your mentally enslaved mind, okay, then clearly you have no idea of what's going on in the world. Okay, so it's important that we understand these things, that we know much more than we are being given. That information, or those information, usually comes from the media, which is highly controlled by the state or by the security and law enforcement agencies in the United States. Okay, so when you hear, particularly within the U.S., when they talk about companies in China who are state sponsored, you also have company here in America that are also state sponsored. You have news agencies, media companies that are state sponsored. And I'll give you an example. So following up to the war with Iraq, okay, again, Iraq had never committed an act of violence on American soil as what happened in on 9/11, right? That was the Taliban, who were at the time in control of Afghanistan. But yet you had newspapers like the New York Times and others who were publishing stories about Iraq that was not true. And they know it was not true. But because you had the military industrial complex wanting to take over, as well as American companies wanted to take over the oil production, or control the oil production in Iraq, created this falsified story about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. Okay? There was no evidence. And so when they invaded Iraq, they killed close to 1 million Iraqis over a lie. But these people get to sleep at night. These people who are mass murderers, who are liars and deceivers, who can destroy countries based on greed, they get to sleep at night and think of themselves as being good, God-fearing people. Do you really think that these people are God-fearing? So anyway, so like I said, we are given false information, trickle down bits and pieces of information with little truths in there to keep a mind in a highly dumbed down state. Okay? While those within the security agencies, law enforcement agencies, white races, are picking off those of us who they view as a threat. Okay? So, I don't want to spend too much time. Either I've spent a lot of time talking about this part of it, but I want to get to into the truth. Okay? And again, you know, I just have to say that I'm thankful that there are people out there, journalists, researchers, academics, who view the truth as essential, as important, and are willing to speak it, show it, right? Because it's the truth. So I just want to thank them. I want to thank the whistleblowers who uncover corruption within the U.S. government, its agencies, its security agencies, its law enforcement agencies, its military agencies, because there is a constitution, right? And you are expected to uphold the Constitution. You are expected to uphold the civil and human rights of those living within your borders as per your laws. But yet, somehow, okay, these people seem to make up their own law, their own policies outside of what is stated and what is written on paper, passed and signed into law by the so-called democratic process of the United States. Okay? But these people, they create their own laws, their own policies, their own rule. They don't believe in a constitution. They don't believe in a Bill of Rights. Okay? They don't believe in human rights. They don't believe in one's privacy unless it's their own. Okay? So, let's start to dispel these lies. So, with the recent declassified document about in which the U.S. security agencies lied again about with the U.S. diplomats being assaulted with directed energy weapons, with them saying that it was environmental. Then a heavily redacted classified document was revealed through the Freedom of Information Act that these very same agencies knew that these diplomats and spies were hit with a directed energy weapon or acoustic weapon. Okay? And again, when these revelations start coming out, you know, I talked about the U.S. Embassy in Moscow being hit with microwave frequencies. You know, and I'm saying to myself, why are these newspaper not looking further into this? Why these news media companies are just taking the word of the CIA, the FBI, when we know that they're lying, right? We know that. And, you know, thank goodness there were actually investigative journalists who dig deeper and said, we know that they're lying. Okay? And I sought to uncover the truth. All right? So, here's an article from The Guardian. Again, one of the things I like to do is not just read on current events or past events that has happened here in this country and around the world, but also go to different medias, news agencies that's outside of the United States. Because like I said, within the United States, the news media here are, for the most part, are heavily controlled. They are state sponsored. Okay? They are. All right? And September of 2022, The Guardian released an article. Okay? And it was called U.S. hid fears of radiation in Moscow embassy in the 70s from staff documents reveal. Right? The U.S. complained to the Soviet Union for more than a decade about microwave radiation directed at its embassy in Moscow, but kept concerns secret from embassy staff for 9 years, according to newly declassified documents. No, these documents is not newly declassified. Okay? You can go read the congressional hearing about this. I can't remember what year it was, but it was in the latter half of the 70s, maybe 77, 78, 79, you know. But, you know, I have the document somewhere. Okay. And then also that too, but you had articles throughout the 1980s that talks about some of the research the US was doing, as well as the Soviet Union, into the field of microwave frequency and radio wave frequency, in the use of mind control, the use of harming the human biology, harming the human mind. Okay. Also, amplifying your brainwave frequency to give you what they call ESP, right? Or have increasing your psychic ability, right? So you have to understand some of the science. You don't have to understand. You don't have to be a scientist to understand this, but understand that our body operate on electrical signal. Okay, as with anything, they must have an energy source. Any living thing, it must have an energy source, right? And so for human beings, food is one of those energy sources, as well as our electrical signal. Okay, this is why you have people who may be who they would call sensitive to the earth electromagnetic field. Okay, so you have people who are more in tune with the earth electromagnetic field, and who are able to use their mind to broadcast whatever they want. Okay, some people have in the past have the ability in what you would call a fortune teller, right? Someone who can see into the future, right? Someone who can have, when people say we have an out of body experience, right? Because again, our energy, right, or what they will call our inner soul, travels outside the body, right? Now, these things are heavily portrayed in the movies, television series, as something that's like hocus pocus, you know. But in reality, the CIA, the military, spend billions of dollars, okay, trying to understand and also create weapons that can give them the advantage over their adversary in what the Soviet call parapsychology. Okay, the weaponization of your mind's electrical signal, or your body's electrical signal, right? The electrical signals of the neurons, and there are billions of neurons within the human mind. Why? Because everything that we see, touch, every color, every gradation, every taste, the differences in surface, the smoothness, the coarseness when your hands get wet, how it feels when your hands get wet, cold, hot, right? Our emotions are all based on the processing ability of our minds to convert our five senses, all right, our six senses, of touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing, as well as our mind, our ESP, our mind's ability to have an extra perceptual ability. Okay? Now, we all have this capability. But because, again, there are systems in place to suppress that, whether it be through the food, through the poisoning of our water, poisoning of our food, poisoning of the air, which limits our minds to think independently, creatively, to dumb us down, right? But yet you have some of us who are not so much affected by these things, right? And so, what you said to yourself, what makes a person a genius? What makes a person have certain abilities that others, the vast majority of people, don't have? Okay, it could be environmental, and it could be through the use of technology. Okay, so let's continue. The reported microwave radiation came to be known as the Moscow signal and was the source of frequent complaint from Washington. U.S. officials were unsure of either the purpose of the signal or the potential health effects of long-term exposure to low-level microwave radiation. See, for me, I don't believe that. Why? Because we know that during the 50s, or even go back to the 30s, okay, with the what is called the microwave auditory effect, right? To talk about radar and how certain people can hear inaudible clicks, right? But what the U.S. wanted to study was research into was whether the Soviets were using that to control the minds of its diplomats. See, they're going to leave that out there. They're going to leave it out of the report. They're going to say, well, they were using it to activate electronic devices within the walls. That could be true, right? So they'll put that out there. But when it comes to mind control or influencing the human mind with these microwave frequencies, they don't want to talk about this. Why? Because they know. They have been doing research. And again, the documents are out there. Dr. Jose Delgado, Dr. Robert Heath from Tulane, okay? Both engaging in some of the most advanced neurological, technological experimentation. And again, this was during the 50s and 60s. All right, you can go read some of the articles. One that I particularly always like to refer to or go back to is the one in which Dr. Jose Delgado was being interviewed by a New York Times reporter. In this very article titled, "Brain Researcher Jose Delgado asks, what kind of human would we like to construct?" Okay? So I'll get to that after this, but let me continue reading. All right? So, the declassified document obtained by the National Security Archive at George Washington University provided a historical perspective on current anxiety about Havana syndrome, a cluster of mysterious neurological symptoms affecting scores of U.S. diplomats and spies, which the U.S. believes may have been caused deliberately by some form of directed energy weapon. Now, this was before they came out earlier this year to say that it wasn't a weapon, that it was something within the environment. Only to know, only they know and they admit in their report that it was a weapon, but they tell the public that it was environmental. So again, understand how they lie, how they deceive. Okay? So, and we see this also within police agencies who lie, who deceive about technology that they use, and then say, well, okay, well, these technologies don't really harm the public. Like New York Police Department and the use of X-ray vans. Okay, these people, these police, have an X-ray machine in their vans driving around New York City. Okay, taking X-rays of parked vehicles or vehicles with people in them. Now, when you go get an X-ray, they put this heavy lead vest over you. There's a reason for that. Okay? And yet, the New York City Police Department was driving around with vans, with X-ray machines, aiming it at the general public. And then want you and I to believe that it caused no harm to the public. Okay, and what happened? Oh, I wish I had my cricket sound on this. Shoot, I gotta program it into this Stream Deck. But yeah, this is what they expect you and I to believe, and we believe it. Why? Because we've been dumbed down. You don't believe me? Just do a quick Google search on intelligence level within the U.S. population over the past 2 decades, and you'll see. Okay? So, the first reference to the Moscow signal was in June 1967, State Department memo recording a conversation between the then U.S. Secretary of State, Dean Rusk, and the Soviet Foreign Minister, Andrei Gromyko, in which Rusk raised the matter of the electromagnetic signal aimed at the embassy in Moscow. Gromyko expressed skepticism about the claim, but Rusk insists there was no doubt whatever about it, and sketched a rough diagram to illustrate his point. Gromyko said he would look into the matter, but no change in the level of radiation was detected. Of course, just as how the Soviet was ignore and deny, with VSTI, talk about us being hit with radio wave and microwave frequency. Again, ignore and deny. So they're not doing anything that they haven't done in the past, that the Russians haven't done when they asked them about it, right? So it's basically said, you know what, you all are crazy. Okay? So, again, we have to understand these things, right? Okay, so over the years that followed, the microwave signal multiplied and intensified. President Gerald Ford wrote to the Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev in December 1975. These transmissions have created levels of radiation within the embassy, which may be, in the opinion of our medical authorities, represents a hazard to the health of the American family living and working in that building. So it's interesting how they would, after they started microwaving us and radio waving us with these frequencies, would lie and say, oh, these frequencies doesn't cause any harm. A matter of fact, they say, oh, we're not doing anything. It's spiritual. All right, it's spiritual. This is a spiritual thing, a supernatural thing. And particularly within my community and within my people, right? We are so highly religious that we believe it. We are so highly trusting, particularly of white officials who time and time again have shown us that they are not to be trusted. But we keep trusting them because that is our condition. Now, no matter how many truth that they show us, no matter how many truth is revealed against their war against us as black people, right? The poisoning of our communities with lead, the building houses, apartment building on toxic land in which our kids play in and play on, and then blaming us for what they have done, yet we continue to believe them. And religion plays a big part of the reason why. Okay? But anyhow, so again, they're saying this is their medical authorities, right? In 1975, they're saying that these signals that have multiplied and intensified represents a hazard to the health of the American families living and working in that building. Ford was almost certainly referring to the ambassador Walter Stossel, who became ill with leukemia at the time and died of the disease a decade later. So when I talk about how, they're always coughing, they use these attack methods where they'll walk past you or coughing, or when I'm in my bedroom, they'll project the sound of coughing as well as other sound. The coughing is, we're going to give you cancer, and we're going to make it appear as naturally occurring. Okay, when my family don't have a history of having cancer. Yes, I had, a cousin who died of cancer. I used to call her my aunt. But she was a third cousin, right? And so they will always, and what they will start to do is have vehicles, and the license plate will have the three letters J-E-A-N. I'm J-E-A. My cousin, my aunt, I love her to death. As a child, she was always there, and but she died of cancer decades ago, right? And so they would start targeting me. Her name was Jane. I used to call her Auntie Jane. So, and you guys have seen some of my videos. If you've been watching my videos for over these years, I talk about that. How all of a sudden they will use license plates to send you sudden subliminal message, particularly when they start coughing. As they walk past you, all of a sudden I'll see cars driving by, park by with the letters J-E-A. Now, I haven't seen that in a while now. Well, so obviously, I think I might have exposed them so much that they stopped targeting me that way. But they'll still do the coughing sound, right? So, in his reply to the president, Biz New insists the electromagnetic field around the U.S. Embassy was of industrial origin. So just like they say, oh, it's environmental, the Russians will tell them, oh, it's just industrial origin. Okay? Despite U.S. fears about the health effects, embassy staff were not informed. Apparently, because of concern, the story would leak to the media and upset arms control negotiation with Moscow. And again, that is a lie, because we know that there were other embassy workers who suffered other illness, such as psychological illnesses, as well as sexual impotency, pregnant women who had miscarriages. It was a whole host of illnesses of these workers within the American embassy in Moscow. Okay? So these so-called newly declassified documents, you have to go and look at the older documents, and specifically go and look at the hearing, right, that took place on Capitol Hill. Okay? So in 1975, conversation with the then Soviet ambassador in Washington, Anatoly Dubanin, the U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger asked for the signal to be turned off before he made a planned visit to Moscow, or he joked, you could give me a radiation treatment. We really are sitting on it here, but too many people know about it. Kissinger told the ambassador, if it was discovered that the Nixon and Ford administration had known about the problem and done nothing to stop it, he said, we will catch hell. The embassy staff were finally informed in 1976. A State Department telegram from, and the reason why also didn't tell, because they wanted to see the biological effect, the psychological effect, as well as the chemical effect of human beings being irradiated with microwave frequency. And they were willing to let their embassy employees be test subjects. Okay? And lied about it in front of their faces. Okay? So, tell you, the embassy staff were finally informed in 1976. The State Department telegram from February of that year said employees should be briefed in small groups, but they should not pass on the details to the dependents. However, the telegram recommended that pregnant staff and family members be medically evacuated immediately for tests. You see that? So you had pregnant staff. So even before, right? You've had pregnant staff who went on to have kids or had miscarriages or what have you. They kept it a secret. The Soviet leadership took no heed of the U.S. complaint, and it is unclear if ever, the Moscow signal was turned off. How were they unclear? Right? Whether it was turned off or not. They knew the signal was turned on, so why did it become so unclear that they didn't know if it was turned off? All right, so with the two leading theories being that it was intended to neutralize electronic intelligence gathering by the embassy, or to activate listening devices built into the structure of the embassy. When the new embassy building was finished using Soviet contractors, it was found to be so full of bugs, the top 2 floors had to be demolished in 1992 and rebuilt by a largely American workforce. Okay. All right, so that's the end of that article. All right, so now let's go to one of my favorite articles that I always come back to, because when they want to lie to us because they think that we're stupid, because they think that they have dumbed us down so much, right? Because they know how they can discredit us so easily, and that we are not capable, or they believe that we are not capable of doing research, we are not capable of uh, recognizing and understanding that something don't seem right with all of this, and then use physical threats, psychological threats, the threat of economic castration, uh, sexual castration, the destruction of our families, the breakup of our relationship, our marriages, causing, uh, um, you know, distress, causing um, hatred within the community of the TI, the target individual within one's own family, by them using technology to manipulate their mind as well as our minds, and particularly within the black communities or communities where black people live, being that we are so highly religious, more than any other group. This is why religion is one of the most powerful tool they use against the black community, and particularly against black men, because the vast majority of black women are highly religious. Okay, so again, from 1970, okay, November 15, 1970. So when all of this was happening in Moscow to the American embassy here in America, you had two of the scientists, okay, one, Dr. Robert Heath of Tulane University, okay, and again, to just remember too that it was also around this time people start, I should say, journalists start looking into the MK Ultra program, okay, and the other sub programs on the MK Ultra heading. Okay, so remember now, again, these things are happening around the same time, right? So the U.S. is acting as if they don't know the health outcome, okay? And I want you to understand how methodically their thinking is and were and still is. How, I talk about the dark triad personality types, okay? And I'm going to read a little bit about that. So again, I want us to understand the kind of mindset, the kind of mentality of the people that we're dealing with here. Those that are in power, those that are running things, right? And understand their mindset. So after watching this video, you should not be surprised. If you're a TI, you should not be surprised of anything that was done to you and of anything that will continue to be done to you. And hopefully, we've exposed this enough to where they stop doing a lot of the things, right? Hopefully. Okay. So, New Heaven. We are going to talk about our love and war and hate. Begins the Professor Dr. Jose M.R. Delgado at the Yale University School of Medicine. And always remember this, that it is always those that are highly regarded in their profession who will commit the most evil act, the most atrocities. Why? Because they are allowed to by the ruling class, including those within the U.S. government, within the military, security agencies. Because it's always been about control and money. Controlling human beings, profiting off of war, profiting off of technology, profiting off of anything, okay, that they deemed to be profitable. Okay? So, they will create things in which they can make a profit off of. Okay, and to control human beings. The class is an undergraduate course at Yale. Although registration was limited to 15, the seminar room is crowded. Every chair around the long table is filled, and some students are sitting on packing crates stored at one end, and some are on extra chairs near the door. But we shall consider these subjects in a novel way. Again, you got to listen to these keywords, right? Because when you read this, you're thinking of this as being some type of novel. Okay, now Dr. Jose Delgado wrote a book called Physical Control of the Human Mind, in which they called it a novel, but it is not a novel. Okay, it is based off of his research. It is not a novel. So why do they call it a novel? All right, and they do that is to create within your mind that this stuff is not real, that this is science fiction. Okay? So, from the inside of the brain thinking, what is going on here? What is happening to the nerve cell while we talk, while we behave, while we feel? Delgado, an emotional speaker, pauses. A spare man in his mid-50s. He leans forward on the table, resting his weight on both large hands. His eyes, restless and light in color, rove swiftly around the circle of staring faces. We have a new way to study behavior, a new methodology which we have developed. He resumes in a voice that is low but as vibrant with promises as a preacher's. There is a stir, almost a sigh from the student. This is what they want to hear about, this new methodology. It is ESB, electrical stimulation of the brain. Delgado is one of the leading patients in its refinement and development. He is also the impassioned prophet of a new psycho-civilized society. Again, they're calling this barbarian a prophet. Okay? Of a new psycho-civilized society whose member would influence and alter their own mental function to create a happier, less destructive, and better balanced man. You know, when I read this, you know, I started thinking back of the communities in which Black people live, in which Black community leaders were kidnapped, taken to mental institutions, and were lobotomized. They had pieces of their brain destroyed, cut out. Why? Because these white racists in lab coats couldn't understand why these people were acting out or were speaking ills of the U.S. government for the treatment of their people, of Black people. Somehow these white professionals, right, these highly decorated, highly coveted neuroscientists couldn't understand that when a people is oppressed, when the environment in which they're living in are poisoned or ignored by the state, that it leads to the decline of the environment, the decline of a person's mental function, and there are those who are going to stand up or rise up against such treatment. But they couldn't understand that. So in order to say, let's try to understand that, in their mind, they had to cut out the part of the brain in which makes them people, Black people, okay, stand up for their rights. Okay? Just think about that. So, and again, less destructive. And what happens in the Go and read Dr. Uh, Peter Bergen, right? The war against urban children or black children. In the 1990s, Baltimore Public Health Department, right, taking the DNA of over 14,000 boys. Okay, 97% were black boys, to look at their DNA to see if there's any uh, biological markers that make them predisposed for violence. When we know the most violent people on this planet are white people, particularly white men. They're not looking at their DNA, but they're looking at black boys' DNA. And why black boys, not black men? Anyway, that's just a question that you should keep into your mind. So, a few days earlier, just before the class start, the New York Times ran a front page story on Dr. Delgado, which was picked up by newspapers across the country. It described his most recent accomplishment, the establishment of direct non-sensory communication between the computer and the brain of a chimp. Okay, so this is what, 1970? And today we're talking about BCI, right? Brain computer interface. So, 1970, 2023. Think about that. So, this study was the latest in a series of experiments involving two-way radio wave contact with the brain of freely interacting animals. Freely interacting, meaning that they had no wires connected to their brain, none of that. They can run around, do whatever they're doing, because they had already developed a computer chip in which they can plant beneath the skin or the flesh of a human being, of an animal, and can influence that animal's or person's behavior. And again, and it was so small that it's basically undetected. In 1970, right? 1970. And I got to pause because, many people will watch this video, if any people watching this video, and won't even think, I won't even see the significance of that, of how even today we continue to be lied to. Okay? They had already perfected the technology, right? Today, you look at a computer microchip in terms of processing node, we're at 5 nanometer, particularly you look at AMD newest processors at 5 nanometer. So the computer chip today have around over 40 billion transistors. That's 40 billion in something that's small. Okay? And you already have quantum computing. Okay? We know that we can store terabytes of data on a single water droplet. Okay? Terabytes of data on a single water droplet. And again, and I speak about this stuff because I don't see any other besides Aldo Mysterioso, again, who taught me to really do research and using certain keywords if what I'm looking for doesn't come up. And so I always got to give thanks to her and shout her out. Okay. right? So, like I said, and you look at DARPA, the DARPA M3, N3, okay, in which for well over a decade, all right, they engage in developing and creating ways in which they can, you know, create a create soldiers in which they can send instruction to on the battlefield individually. Okay. So, um, this study was the latest in a series of experiments involving two-way radio wave contact with the brains of freely interacting animals, because it clearly demonstrates that behavior can be influenced by remote radio command. This research has been seen by some as posing the ultimate threat to human freedom and integrity. So, what does that mean? And also, you don't need to be microchipped for them to influence you, but you need to be microchipped in order for them to get feedback, right? So, if they see you as a threat, so imagine if Martin Luther King was alive today, right? To be able to control him, right? To not have him speak about certain things, or or any other uh, messiahs that came along. Okay, and I'm not when I say the word messiah, and they understand the word messiah, it's not someone who is the son of God, or is someone who's anointed, someone who has reached a high level of consciousness, someone who can look and see the ills of the world and is trying to do something about it, in which the powers that be do not want to have. They always want to remain in power to control everything. And the threat of someone who sees all the terrible things that they're doing to the vast majority of human beings and are willing to rise up, unite the people, this is who they're afraid of. And it's not one person. Okay? So, let me so the morning that story appeared, it was raining mildly in New York, in New Haven. In Delgado Secretary's office, part of the cluttered wing his staff his staff occupies on the second floor of the Sterling Hall of Medicine, the telephone started ringing early. It kept on and on. In the dark room next door, Delgado was just finishing the photographing of some EEG recordings or brainwaves. He brustles back across the hall and into his own office, immaculate as a surgeon in his white lab coats. What do you want me to tell you? He asked shortly, sitting at his desk. He runs an irritable hands over his short-cut curly hair. I don't want to talk about my wife, my friend, my family, my friends. That's not science. He glanced, scowling through the window at the large white square of the School of Public Health building next door, and his expressions suddenly cleared. He turned back, leaned forward over his desk, relaxing in one of his rapid mood changes, which one very quickly learned to expect. The human race, he says, is at an evolutionary turning point. We are very close to having the power, listen to this, to construct our own mental functions through a knowledge of genetics, which I think will be completed within the next 25 years. You guys reading this, right? Hopefully you're reading this with me. And through a knowledge of the cerebral mechanism which underlines our behavior. The question is, what sort of humans would we like ideally to construct? He smiles. Not only our cities are very badly planned, we as human beings are too. The result in both cases are disastrous. Okay? So let's skip through this and let's go to the most telling part. Okay. Where are we at here? Here we go. So, in a small corridor off the end of the main hallway are the animal cages, full of rhesus, monkeys, and gibbons right now. Delgado goes into one room, opening the cage of a female rhesus named Linda, after his 8-year-old daughter. Hello, hello, Linda, he says softly to the monkey, who scamper up on the wire mesh ceiling. It's okay, calm down. He takes a piece of apple, holds it out of her to her. Linda comes down, grabs the apple. A moment later, she throws it at Delgado. He laughs. That's not nice, Linda. Come down. She consents at last, comes swiftly to sit in Delgado's arm and throws her own around his neck. Listen to this, he parts the hair on her shoulder, revealing an almost invisible transdermal brain stimulator. Linda has been wearing this for over a year now. It's very important in its implications for humans. Okay? One of the real difficulties with humans is the cosmetic one. This transdermal can be placed below the skin and sealed forever, so that there are no unsightly plugs or equipment showing. We're working now on another one that is even smaller. Okay? Delgado strokes Linda's fur, then he looks up. I have a great respect for the human brain, he remarks with an air of a man who has had to reiterate the statement often. It distressed me greatly when I first came to this country in the early 50s to see so many patients without frontal lobes. Of course, much psychosurgery has now been replaced by drug treatment, but there is still people with dangerous seizures who simply do not respond to medication. All right? So again, when we look at the push, particularly within the Black community and Black children being diagnosed with ADHD and having prescribed to them medications to make them very calm and very docile. Okay? But what else have they been doing? What other technology are they using? What else? So let's go to, actually, I don't want to use, let's go to my Kindle app. Okay. And we are going to talk about this. So this is from the book Controlling the Human Mind, the Technologies of Political Control or Tools for Peak Performance by Dr. Nick Begich. Okay. And here he talks about frequency modulated effects. Okay. So he says, I'm not going to read a whole bunch of stuff, but I will read this. Okay. And let's go here. Where it's highlighted. Okay. So actually, let me I don't like to use the cursor, or not use the cursor, but I don't like the cursor to be seen. And the reason why is because when I'm being remotely neuromonitored, see, if I show my cursor, they will still have me on the remote neural monitoring, but they may say, well, we're since we hack into his network, whatever word that he put the cursor on, they'll use the sirens or the car honking to, say, well, we're not, invading his private thoughts within his brain. We're going by what we see on the screen, right? And so when I don't show the cursor and I'm reading and they're using sirens or car honking when I read particular sound, particularly if I'm reading in my mind, right? So I'm not doing a video or anything like that, reading my mind, and they will use the police sirens or the car honking when it comes to me reading certain words. So I know that it's remote or monitored. Okay, so the use of light, light, sound, microwave, radio, television network, computer systems, or power grids, all of which a pulse modulated signal can be introduced, can be used to create a deliberate effect or a side effect impacting living organism in neutral, positive, or negative ways. Because research have shown that energy exchanges of very specific type drive the foundational processes of life itself. There is a need to understand how these signals work and design systems that avoid any incidental or unpurposeful biological effect without the clear consent of people. Again, so they're using these technologies without our consent. Okay, so this is how they've microchipped us target individuals without our consent. They've run a psychological brainwashing program, in which they call coercive persuasion programming, try to sanitize what brainwashing really is, or behavior modification. Okay. What other term they use? They will use the term thought reform. Okay. All to sanitize what it is, which is brainwashing. Okay. So there are real possibilities that are already advancing without any regulation or control to protect people from the wrongly applied effect of these technologies. At the same time, there are real possibilities that through convergence of several technologies, great breakthrough will be made in longevity, health, and increased human potential. Unless we master our understanding in these areas, others will continue to expose people, the environment, and every living thing on the planet to forces that can be damaging and to some deadly. There is increasing evidence that not only the chemical soup of mankind, but also the electromagnetic mix we have created may be contributing more to stress and other health disorders than once imagined, destroying the environment and creating problems that will persist for decades to come. Okay? Like I said, this book discusses technology in which has already been perfected, and it was perfected in the early 2000s. So what we are seeing and what you see these news agencies reports about, these tech publications reporting about, it is the private sector, okay, in which now, and when you look at the funding, you'll see the military is funding the majority of these researchers. Why? Because they are trickling down the technology that they have already created to give American tech companies a leg up over their foreign competition, and also to make you and I believe that these things are not here already and they're coming down the pipeline in the future. in the next 10 years, 20 years. No. If in 1970s they can place a computer chip, right, inserted in the shoulder of a rhesus monkey to where it is invisible, that you can't even see any scarring or any example of having something placed under the skin, and then says that they've been working on an even smaller one. And again, and which these are freely moving animals, but they can affect and regulate the behavior of those animals. And this was in the 1970s. So when you understand these things, when you do the research and you know these things, and again, I'm not making this up. Okay? You know that they are way more advanced, particularly the military, right, than what they claim to be. And the use of private tech companies, private tech corporations, and also have them engage in non-consensual human experimentation, it takes the anger away from the public if and when it has been shown that these companies engage in non-consensual human experimentation. And I'm going to tell you what, Facebook. What happened when we found out, the public found out, that not only did Facebook was paid by a company, Cambridge Analytica, to use Facebook to manipulate its users to create a disdain, a dislike for one political candidate over another. Then Facebook conducted illegal, non-consensual human experimentation on its users for the purpose of what they call emotional contagion, meaning that Facebook was engaging in psychological manipulation to negatively affect our emotions. And not only that, engaging in psychological manipulation of teenagers and young people, right, who had the thought of unaliving themselves. Okay? And what happened? There was no public outcry. Facebook went to Capitol Hill. They had the questionings, and that was it. No regulation going forward. No fines, right, on Facebook for what they did. And who knows the damage that Facebook caused. But again, no regulation on the part of the US government to regulate social media companies from engaging in such experimentation going forward. Okay? There's a reason why the military, the CIA uses public companies by partnering with them against state-sponsored. These are what they love to claim that companies in China or the Chinese government is engaging in. Partnering with companies within their borders. When the United States government, its military, its security agencies, law enforcement agencies do the same thing. So let's look at some of the things that, and particularly when it comes to also law enforcement. New York City. The New York City Police Department have a secret slush fund in which money, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars are donated by private corporations. Okay? Also, private corporations allow law enforcement agencies to use and operate their forensic laboratories. Okay, we see here in New York, with the New York City Police Department spend $750,000 for 2 robot dogs. Okay, you know, I mean, come on, you know, I'll tell you, they have gotten us so uh, distracted and defeated, you know, but I still continue to do these videos, though, you know, I want to do that. I want to do them more often, but because again, I'm constantly under attack, psychological attack, being microwave, radio wave, even today. So I woke up late in bed, and then they had my niece, friend, came in, started shaking her keys as she walks by my bedroom, and I hear the police siren. Whoop. I'm talking about it. So I see you when I see you. You know, her name is Keisha. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can show you guys a picture. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I am going to do that. Okay. And I want them to see that no, I'm not afraid. Okay. I am not afraid. Oh, now they start with the spinning sound now. Okay, so I am going to show you guys, because I know, let's see if I can. Oh, it is not allowing me to. Okay, hold up. Let me do this. Oh, let's see. All right. I guess I can't find her. But anyhow, um, yeah. So anyway, I guess I will have to uh get a picture so you know, I know I love exposing them. You know I love exposing them, right? Whenever they want to use somebody new, and as I talked about this, is that, you know, once I expose the people who they use outside, like when I go out, what have you, they will turn to family members to target. They will turn to friends of family members to target me. You know, so they'll always move from one form of targeting to the next. All right. Anyways, but I can't find a picture, so we're going to just move on. Okay. When I get a picture, we'll definitely do another video and expose that individual. Okay. So yeah. All right. So where was I? Yeah. So anyhow, again, these technologies are already perfected. Okay. And what they're doing is using American tech companies, funding them, right, to make it seem as if these things are coming down the pipeline when these things are already here. They've been here. Okay. The U.S. military security agencies are far more advanced than what these tech companies are showing you. See? Okay. And we know when the American companies, the American military, the security agencies are developing these things, it's not to help people. No, it's for the nefarious reason. It's to control heads of state, to control presidents of other countries. Without these individuals realizing that they are being manipulated, that their consciousness is not their own. It is a manufactured consciousness, just as how the vast majority of my people in the diaspora, how our minds have been shaped, created. It is a false consciousness that we're given, right? And it isn't until we become aware and start to think for ourselves and start to look at the reality of things and wanted to change the reality, okay, in ways that benefit yourself and myself and our people, they're going to attack you. They're going to find you and they're going to manipulate you. They are going to get the community involved and targeting you in order to destroy you. It's in their document, the FBI, Search of the Black Messiahs. Okay? We will control them. If we cannot control them, we will destroy them. Okay? And you guys, I hope you guys may not be hearing the sirens outside, but, you know, particularly when I'm reading this stuff, they they don't like it, right? They will start using the police sirens. Now, before I go, okay, this video is going on 2 hours. Let's not really discuss this, but I just want to show you guys something. Okay, I want to show you guys something. Again, this is a declassified document. Okay. Okay. The USAF declassified and released instructions on file. All right. Approved for release 2001. Air War College, a university. Psychic warfare exploring the mind frontiers. Now, again, did you know that the CIA was funding college professors in Africa to study the African spiritual system? Okay? And what did they say? That the Africans were in tune with the laws of nature. That they understood the relationship between themselves and this planet. The animals, the trees, the air. Okay? So, you know, you guys can get this document online. I would say that you guys should read it. Okay? So, this is how we begin to understand, you know, what is being done to us, what has been done to us, and the amount of research that went into developing and creating technology that is used on us and continue to be used, and our government continue to lie. Our government and security agencies and military agencies continue to lie about the development and creation of these technologies. Okay? Also, here is a document. Okay, you guys can find online. Okay, and this document has a lot of the research document, including the research, the declassified number of these files, where you can find online. This is 381 pages of links, right, to all of the research programs and development programs, not just by the United States, but other countries as well, who've also been studying the exact same thing. Okay? So we have again, a treasure trove of information that you can do research on. Okay, so you have a better understanding of the technology that is being used on SSTIs. Okay, so again, Dr. Nick Burgage, Controlling the Human Mind. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it there.